If a president is to be criminally charged, he must be impeached in Congress and convicted in the Senate first. And this pertains only to official acts. Now, Will Chamberlain brings up a really great point in this. So he says some further analysis of the Supreme Court's decision to grant cert of the on the presidential immunity question. Bluff, I don't know if that's a reference to a person. I'm not a lawyer, so I think the Supreme Court is likely to reverse the D.C. Circuit. And as a result, Trump is very unlikely to face trial in D.C. or Florida before the election. Here's the question presented. Whether and if so, to what extent does a former president enjoy presidential immunity from criminal prosecution for conduct alleged to involve official acts during his tenure in office? He says, here's an important thing to understand. The court is not going to resolve the question of whether President Trump's conduct did, in fact, involve official acts. So unless the Supreme Court agrees with the D.C. Circuit completely and holds that there is no such immunity for former presidents, there won't be a trial before the election. He says, I think the likely outcome will be the Supreme Court will hold that there is some amount of presidential immunity from criminal prosecution. It won't be absolute, as it is for civil litigation, because the founders certainly contemplated that a president might be impeached and convicted by the Senate and then subsequently face criminal prosecution. But for the Supreme Court to find that no such immunity exists, it would have to repudiate much of the logic and force of Nixon v. Fitzgerald, where the court held that former presidents have absolute immunity from civil lawsuits arising out of official acts. The most likely scenario, the court agrees with Trump's legal position, reverse the D.C. Circuit, hold the former presidents are immune from criminal prosecution for official acts, save those that lead to an impeachment and a conviction in the Senate. Then they will likely remand back to the district court for further proceedings, which would be in some sort of hearing analysis of whether Trump's conduct was in fact involving official acts. And then those proceedings would likely be subject to appeal. It would likely go back to the D.C. Circuit, then to the Supreme Court. This would take months. So long story short, this trial's never going to happen. Rachel Maddow's completely wrong. She has no idea what the hell she's talking about. It's actually amazing how stupid she is. Or it could just be that she's lying. Or both.
Yeah, I mean, the key part here is official acts, obviously, right? And the president being the chief magistrate, when he acts within the scope of his duties, of course, he's immune from prosecution. And I would argue that, this official act investigating 2020 election fraud certainly falls within the president's official presidential duties, right? He has a duty to ensure that our elections are secure and to, make sure that everyone's vote is accurately being counted.
I'd be a little more aggressive in the language. I'd say it's his obligation to do so. If the chief of our federal law enforcement said, there's a lot of accusations of crime going on, but hey, look, I don't want to be involved. That being said, there is still a conflict of interest in that it was an election he was involved in. But still, that's it.
Yeah.
Typically, if you've got like a sheriff and he's accused of a crime, and then they're like,
have immunity.
Well, no, I mean, if a sheriff was accused of a crime, you would need a higher form of law enforcement to come in. You'd get state level, you'd get federal intervention, something to say, okay, we need some kind of investigation of this individual. For Donald Trump, you need the federal government to investigate accusations of wrongdoing, unconstitutionality, et cetera, but there is no higher law enforcement. So it should go to the checks and balances of Congress. Mm-hmm. And then after Congress acquitted Donald Trump saying he didn't do it, it should have ended there.
Right. And again, yeah, this concept of immunity is, well, it's not like specifically mentioned by name in the Constitution. It's a pretty well-established aspect of our legal system. Police officers have qualified immunity. States have it. The federal government argues it in cases frequently. And it's something that presidents have as well. So this isn't some like crazy conspiracy theory that they think we're pushing to instill Trump as like a king. This is a well-established aspect of our legal system.